Hello and welcome back everybody to the Foodbuild factory, where today we're going to take a look at the Emmet Mountain Elder. That's the guy you can see on screen right now. And as always, I'm going to show you some gameplay in the first half of the video, and in the second half of the video we're going to take a look at the perks, mutations, equipment and everything else. So without further ado, let's get right into it and look at this little passion project of mine. So this build is something I had in mind for quite a while at this point. I was kind of revisiting the idea for better half of a year, I guess, and it's kind of a continuation of another build I made like a while ago, which was the Emmet Mountain Apprentice. And back at the time, what I was trying to do was just to see how well can you get away in Fallout 76 without wearing any armor. So obviously you're going to be kind of flimsy, but there are a bunch of perks that kind of give you a little bit of extra survivability and sometimes just straight up armor. And yeah, back at the time though, I wasn't really going all in on it. I was just trying to get enough of those perks in order to make that build work. Today though, I really just, the challenge for me was easy. I just wanted to make one such build with every single survivability perk that I can think of. And yeah, I think I managed to do quite well. I mean, maybe I forgot something, but I think I don't. I think I haven't, sorry. But yeah, the only exception is I had to somewhat make a decision if I want to make this a solo build or a team build, because if it was a team build, there would have been perks like bodyguards, for example, which gives you extra damage resistance, and I think energy resistance as well for every single team member that you have. And on the opposite, if we have a solo build, we do have Lone Wanderer, which on paper should give you 20% damage reduction. And I decided to go with a solo build on this occasion, but just keep in mind that could make a little bit of a difference depending on how you want to do that. However, yes, I don't really regret going for a solo build on this occasion, and other than that, I was really surprised at how well this all ended up. Now, the big elephant in the room, however, is why would you even want to do something like that? And the answer to that is there's no real reason, to be honest. Like, no matter how you phrase it, it's not a good decision to do something like this. You're just having to do a lot of compromises when it comes to your perks, especially to your weapon of choice and your weapon damage perk cards and so on. So the only real reason why you would ever want to do something like that is just for pure style. And on this occasion I wanted to run around with a hazmat suit because, to be honest, it's kind of astonishing how many hazmat suits we have, like different skins of them and as rewards and so on. Given how little use they do have, actually. Like, pretty much never does anyone choose to run around with a hazmat suit. You just have better options. Like, if you are anything but a stealth build and you want to go into a nuke zone, well, just hop into some power armor and you're done. And on the other side, if you are not a power armor build and really can't afford to be one, you still have Chinese stealth armor, which gives you a little bit of resistances on top of giving you a stealth bonus if you want to go down that route. So yeah, hazmat suits really just are a style choice, to be honest. But that being said, if you want to do something like that, you can definitely do so. And while you're not going to be a super massive tank that can soak up every single bit of damage in the game, I definitely ran with builds, like standard builds, that had less armor than this one here. So yeah, it can be done easily. Well, easily is maybe the wrong word. You will rely on a lot of legendary perks, and the reason for that is that on paper, when I started doing the build, it seemed like, oh yeah, put Iron Clad here, put Invasive there, a little bit of Barbarian and so on. But I quickly noticed that it takes a whole lot of perk points in order to really get all of the survivability perks. On top of that, stuff like Serendipity and so on, you know. So yeah, there was very little room left for picking the core build, to be honest, like picking a weapon and so on. So ultimately the decision had to be made rather if I want to use a weapon that lies within the agility tree or within strength. Reason for that is obviously evasive and barbarian are part of the build here, and those two perks, they rely on you having maxed out strength and agility in order to really get the most benefit from them. So yeah, that's where my decision came into play, and ultimately I went with a strength kind of build using heavy weapons, as you can probably tell already, because yeah, when it comes to agility, you could go for guerrilla or gunslinger. However, those two builds are not as powerful to begin with as heavy gunners, and you really need a lot of bats usually in order to make them work, so you're looking at a lot of other complementary perks that you need. When it comes to strength, however, yeah, heavy weapons in particular, in my opinion, are so good that you can use them without having to specialize really into them. Like all the complementary perks like lock and load, bare arms and so on, they're really more for convenience in my opinion. Like just having a little bit of damage perks going on with heavy guns is mostly enough to make them viable. Now another big thing here though is that we do not use power armor, so we do miss out on stabilized, which is always a kind of a bummer. I mean, it's not terrible, you missing out on quite a bit of armor penetration, so yeah, that was a bit of a bummer, but ultimately I found that the gatling plasma I'm using here is powerful enough, and I did not ever really feel like I was missing out on damage or anything. I was doing relatively fine for the whole part, just because the weapon in and of itself is so good. The weapon handling is also not too crazy, but we can afford to be relatively close when it comes to enemies, so we don't really need a whole lot of range and anything. So yeah, that's why I made the decision to run with the equipment that you see in this build here, which is, as I said, the gatling plasma. We do have an anti-armor faster fire rate version with 50 damage resistance while aiming down sights. Obviously the 50 damage resistance while aiming down sights is not really a meta pick or anything, but it sells really well considering the kind of build we are running here, meaning that we want all of the damage resistance perks that we can get outside of using armor itself. And in addition to that, I do have bullet shield, which is a perk in strength as well, which gives you 60 damage resistance whenever you are firing a heavy weapon. So most of the time when we are in a fighting situation, we do have 60 extra damage resistance just from that perk alone. And if we aim down sights, which is something I found myself naturally doing with this weapon here a lot, you in addition to that will have another 50 damage resistance. So yeah, that's doesn't sound like a lot, but it adds up with all the other things. And yeah, needless to say, as I said earlier, you don't really need to do something like this. This build is a little bit of a lost cause to begin with. Like, obviously, just focusing on getting damage cards and having some kind of armor will easily get you similar results while not having to spend a ton of perk cards that you would otherwise never use. But it was a fun experience and I really enjoyed it. There's not really any part of the game I feel like I can't really take on. Obviously there's some stuff like decryption daily ops with robots, where if you're not in stealth you take a ton of damage and everything, that don't really work too well with this build, but that's something I just feel like I have with every single build. There's not a tank build that can survive everything with ease. I mean, maybe there are some super tank builds, but you get the point here. And yeah, ultimately there's not a whole lot else to say here. This is definitely one of those builds where I have to take a little bit more time explaining the perks again. But yeah, it's just riddled with compromise. However, in the end, it did work out. Another big compromise you will see later on is, in order to really have all of the resistance perks that you can have, I wanted to have the grounded mutation, which gives you 100 extra energy resistance. However, that means we do have less damage with energy weapons, which obviously the gatling plasma is classified as. So due to class freak, we are missing out to 12% damage with our weapon, But yet again, similar to what I said about stabilized, the weapon in and of itself, in my opinion, is just good enough so we can get away with such a stuff and don't really feel underpowered. You could obviously just use a ballistic heavy weapon and not have to deal with that nonsense, but that was just a decision I made. Using a energy weapon was just a decision I made for the simple reason that it visually fitted well. Like, I didn't really find another weapon that went well with the hazmat suit here. Obviously the black hazmat suit is something you can combine very well with pretty much everything, but I already made a build with the black hazmat suit. So this time around I just wanted to use the Emmet Mountain one, was also fitting as a kind of next step on the character that I already made, the Emmet Mountain Apprentice. So yeah, that's why I decided to go with this weapon here and with the debuff from grounded, but as I said, keep in mind, use something like a 50 cal or minigun, and you don't really have to worry about that. Now, one big thing you just saw here is our weapon broke, and while in and of itself this might not tell you too much because it could just be the case that I started with like 20% condition or something, that's not the case. I started with 110% condition, something like that. So this is the only minor drawback in my opinion to the build. The condition of the weapon doesn't hold together too well, and we don't really have the perk points on this occasion to justify using stuff like gunsmith and lucky break in order to make the weapon hold together longer. So this is one of the compromises I said earlier. I mean, those compromises are more obvious when it comes to damage related stuff, but there's also compromises made when it comes to convenience. However, it's not like it's super crazy or something. I think repairing your weapon is just a nuisance. It's not really something you can't handle, to be honest. And yeah, another big thing about the gatling plasma, in my opinion, we're using a prime version by the way, it is a rather ammo efficient weapon. Like, it's not one of those weapons where you never have to worry about crafting because you just do a daily op or something and are swimming in ammo again. You definitely want to rely on crafting. Maybe you'll get lucky and can buy some ultrasonic plasma cores every now and then, but the crafting process in and of itself is pretty effective in my opinion. It's not too cost heavy, and you get a lot of ammo in return. So I feel like that's a pretty convenient build, and that's in that kind of situation. Well, let's just see how fast we can melt this guy here. Another nice thing that's... Wait, did the Deathclaw fall down? That's kind of weird. No. I think the Deathclaw glitched into the terrain here. I'm not gonna be bothering to get it out there, to be honest. And yeah. Oh, I see something. No, that's the red stack though. Let's put him out of his misery. Anyways, back to the topic. Yeah, another big thing I feel like people don't talk a whole lot about when it comes to using plasma weapons is if you're one of those people who wants to max out their daily caps every now and then and sell stuff to vendors. Yeah, whenever you kill an enemy with a plasma weapon, you have a chance to get nuclear material, which is a resource you can sell to vendors. And if you just play with a plasma weapon the whole day and collect all the nuclear material, you can easily max out your daily caps, your daily 1400 caps in the vendor, just by selling that byproduct of your fighting, which is kind of a neat thing. It's not powerful or anything, but just something I felt noteworthy to mention. And yeah, I think other than that, the whole purpose of the build, as I said, was to just see how well you can get away with not using any armor, and I haven't really talked a whole lot about it because I think you just see it. Obviously we take some damage here and there, but given what kind of fights we took so far, we're not doing bad. Like, we are pretty tanky, and the nice thing about it is you never have to worry about repairing armor or anything. Like, oh, excuse me, I hope I didn't shatter your eardrums here if you're watching this video with headphones or something. yeah, you never have to worry about repairing armor or anything. And another thing to mention is, obviously, this is just like the baseline of the build. You can easily put whatever you want on top of it. Like, this is also a good kind of build if you feel like you want to run around with, let's say, wood armor or something, just because you like the style or have an idea for it. You can just basically do that and be far within the point of diminishing returns, so you're definitely on the safe side when it comes to your armor. Because nowadays, I think we are at 321 damage and 315 energy resistance, something like that. So it's pretty respective for what it is, to be honest. And yeah, I mean, I want to say that we're done with the gameplay part of the video, but typically when I do that, yeah, I start to record and yeah, we get a surprise. I hear a super mutant somewhere here, but there it is. This guy would have just interrupted us. So yeah, okay, more shots. Back there are some. I think we cleared out that place earlier, but doesn't seem like it. Here you can see pretty much the range limitation. I mean, you probably, I mean, there is a good chance you are better at just keeping your weapon where it's supposed to be, but this for level 100 legendary super mutant, I think we managed to hold our shit together pretty well. Like, I say this, no, I'm dying. Yeah, to be honest, that was just that was on my part. I could have just used this impact. I think you get the point here. But yeah, for how fast this guy could have shredded us, it was actually going pretty well, I would suppose. These guys can be nasty and can be really taking you down very fast. So on this occasion we actually held together relatively well. As I said, I just should have taken a stimpack there rather than two. Oh, we taken him down, I think. So it was a 1-on-1. Anyways, I think now we finally are done with the gameplay part of the video and we will have time to take a look at our mutations and everything. So I want to get over this rather quickly. However, yeah, there's a lot to talk about, so it might take a second. So first of all, let's start with our mutations. We have Bird Bones, Grounded, Marsupial, Scaly Skin, Speed Demon, and Unstable Isotope. As always, Marsupial and Speed Demon, not a lot to talk about here. They're just for convenience and movability. Bird Bones and Unstable Isotope, those are really not necessary on this occasion. They are yet again just for convenience. We get a little bit of a benefit from Bird Bones, just because extra agility means a little bit more action points for dodgy. But other than that, it's just, yeah, I like to not fall so fast, basically. And Unstable Isotope is just a little bit of a yeah, character nuisance, you know, like when you're getting attacked, you can sometimes explode into a mushroom cloud. I find it's funny, but it's not necessary by any means. The more important mutations here are Scaly Skin and Grounded. I already talked about Grounded. We do get a debuff from it, but we want to live with it just for the sake of really getting all of the alternative damage and energy resistances in the game that you can get. And Scaly Skin, this was a lot more easy to make the decision to use that, because yeah, as I just said, AP isn't in any way important for this build. We're not relying on it other than for dodgy, so minus 12 AP basically does nothing to our character, but we get 50 damage and energy resistance from it, which is really great, to be honest, compared to how much we need to do in order to get that otherwise, like for example Ironclad, which you will see. And yeah, that's it about mutations. Going over to our equipment, and we are starting off with our weapon. Yet again, not a lot to say here that I haven't said already. We do have an anti-armor, faster fire rate, gatling plasma with 50 damage resistance while aiming. So I think I talked about everything of that pretty much. Like, obviously anti-armor, faster fire rate is a good combination. I don't think I have to talk a lot about that. On this occasion I would really go for anti-armor, just because we already miss out on stabilized, and that way we don't miss out too much of armor penetration. And in terms of modifications, we do have a prime receiver, rifled barrel, and reflex sight and beam focuser. So yeah, pretty much just everything you can do, to be honest, other than maybe put a splitter on it, but that didn't really work out all that well for me. And lastly, we do have the Valorous Alistair paint, which goes rather well with the hazmat suit, in my opinion. Yeah, that's kind of it. Not sure what else to say. And in terms of armor, we will be done pretty quickly because every single bit of armor that we have is our backpack, which has the armor-plated modification on it to give us 90 damage resistance rather than no resistance at all in most cases. And I felt like that was a good decision on this occasion. Obviously, I'm missing out on my beloved chemist backpack modification, which makes stimpaks and so on way less, and we didn't really have room to use traveling pharmacy as a perk as well on this occasion. So for once, I actually had to live with the fact that I have to carry around stimpaks that weigh something, but it didn't felt like too much of a burden, to be honest. So yeah, 90 damage resistance from our backpack. And in terms of our apparel, we do have our hazmat suit here. As you can see, it's broken, but it stays equipped unless you unequip it. And while we miss out on 1000 radiation resistance, this doesn't really matter, to be honest, because the main resistance against, or the main protection against radiation from hazmat suits is a hidden function that isn't stated here, which is that it just flat out reduces radiation damage taken. So the 1000 radiation resistance ultimately means very little, to be honest. And going back to armor, what I wanted to show here is our resistances. We do have 294 damage and 288 energy resistance. I set a different number earlier on, and I think I know why that is, because if we just go back real quick and where we died and lost our junk, there it is, 45 wood scraps. And if we get back to our place and look at our armor, we should be up, because as you probably can tell already if you know this game and know what I'm doing here, I took a perk that you will probably never have seen before, which is junk shield. So now we are up to 321 damage and 350 energy resistance, because yeah, if you're carrying around 45 pieces of scrap, doesn't really matter which kind of scrap it is or the weight. I found, or I'm pretty sure I found out when I tested it, that 45 pieces of individual junk is the amount you want to carry with you in order to get the most benefit from this perk. And yeah, that brings us up to these resistances, which I would say, yeah, given we have no piece of armor on, is actually pretty good. And yeah, with that being said, now we're going to take a look at our perks here. And yeah, starting off with strength, obviously this is maxed out. We do have blocker, which is one of the best defensive perks in the game for the amount of perk points you have to put in. Other than that, barbarian, this was a very obvious pick, I already talked about it. And yeah, obviously you want to have strength maxed out in order to get the benefits from it. And that being said, we're left with our heavy gunner perks. I have rank 2 of all of them. This was pretty much everything I could afford in order to boost our damage, but I think like this was actually going very well. It was enough. Like obviously having them maxed out would be nice, but it did work like that. And lastly, we do have bullet shield. So obviously you could probably live without bullet shield and use the other perk points that you get from that for maxing out your heavy gunner perks. But as I said, I really wanted to take every single defensive perk I can get for this build, and this is the one I was talking about during the video, where while firing a heavy gun we gain 60 damage resistance, which obviously works very well with this character. Going over to perception, we have refractor, which is a perk that I would probably never take under any other circumstance, just because yeah, it's a lot of perk points for relatively little return. Like 40 energy resistance for 4 perk points is really not that great. So yeah, there's rarely any occasion where this would be useful, other than if you really wanna take every single defensive perk in the game. So yeah, that's refractor for you. Then we do have endurance. Obviously I wanted to have this maxed out just so we can get as much hit points, as much hit points as possible without using a ton of buffs and everything. So yeah, 15 endurance, life giver, just to give us a little bit more of those hit points. Ironclad, 50 damage and energy resistance. So this is basically doing the same as our Scaly Skin mutation, but we use 5 perk points, so that's a hefty investment. But this was a very obvious pick, to be honest. Then we do have Adamantium Skeleton and Fireproof. Now these are pretty much the most commonly used defensive perks, in my opinion. I don't feel like I have to talk a whole lot about them and why they are useful on this occasion. Going over to Charisma. Charisma at 7 with the combination that I ran very often when the game came out, which is just Lone Wanderer and Tenderizer. Lone Wanderer for 20% less damage taken, which is obviously pretty good for our means, and a bit of extra AP regen, which is nice to have, but yet again, AP isn't really a big part of this build. And Tenderizer, this is pretty obvious, yeah, just a 10% multiplicative damage bonus for our weapon, since we're not going to one-shot any enemy other than like red roaches maybe. So yeah, this was a pretty obvious pick, as it pretty much always is. Going over to Intelligence, we do a First Aid, obviously, just because, yeah, we are a little bit flimsy, so yeah, sometimes we rely on, or should rely on, Stimpaks to stay alive. So yeah, that's why First Aid is here, making your Stimpaks a little bit more effective. Also couples in very well with the fact that we don't have anything to reduce the weight of our Stimpaks. So while you would normally just swim in like 500 Stimpaks and spam 3 of them, on this occasion you can afford to carry around less of them because they are more effective. Then we have Nerd Rage, and we have batteries included. Nerd Rage, this for 90% of the time you're playing won't be in any effect, but it is kind of a lifesaver if you get into a situation like we got earlier with the level 100 super mutant that was taking us down. This would have easily given me the time to react and use a Stimpak. I just didn't because I was occupied talking. So yeah, pretty straightforward, and batteries included. Yeah, this is, to be honest, one of the single, let's say, convenience perks that I afforded to use in this build, just so we can carry around our ammo a little bit easier. You could actually live without it yet again, but yeah, I wanted to have it. Then we go over to Agility with Action Boy. Not a lot to say here, I said it before, you don't really need it. You can easily use 3 ranks of Adrenaline to give you a little bit more damage on this occasion, but I wanted to have Action Boy anyways. Same with Marathoner, so these 2 perks you could really use in order to make room for, as I said, maybe 1 rank of Bone Survivor and 5 ranks of Adrenaline. I just wanted to switch up things a little bit, and you will see in a second we have another perk that relies on us running around, and therefore Marathoner felt like a good idea. Then we do have Evasive. This was another obvious pick. It's pretty much the same as Barbarian, just for agility here. And this is the perk I was just talking about. Marathoner, as long as we are sprinting outside of power armor, we do get 45 damage and energy resistance. Again, not the world. 45 damage and energy resistance in and of itself isn't crazy, but if things add up, it's a pretty good thing to have. And yeah, Marathoner combined with high agility and high endurance means that we can basically run for ages. Like, I don't think I ran out of action points from running a single time when using this build. So yeah, you can basically run as much as you like. And lastly, Dodgy. This is probably one of the single best defensive perks if you not run a build that relies extremely, or struggles as it is, with action points. If you feel like you have enough action points, Dodgy is always a good decision, just to reduce the damage that's incoming by any means, at the cost of action points. And that leaves us with Luck, where we do have Serendipity. Pretty much everything I said about Nerd Rage also goes for Serendipity, so not a lot to say here. Ricochet, this is just a flat 18% damage reduction from range attacks. As far as I'm concerned, I'm not really looking for the damage it does while ricocheting. This is just basically, so yeah, 18% of the shots we are shot with don't do anything to us. Then we do have Class Freak. This is a pretty obvious one. I said it earlier. We do have to live with the debuff from Grounded already. So yeah, Class Freak felt like a good idea. If you feel fine with using a ballistic weapon and don't really want to use a energy weapon, then you can live without Class Freak and do something else here. But yeah, I didn't see no reason, to be honest. Then we have one of those picks that's just relatively random. I do a Storm Chaser here just because we can easily survive outside in a red storm or anything without having any problem with it. We do get regeneration while outside during rain or red storms. This is a very situational thing. You should never rely on it just because you can control if it rains or if there's a red storm, unless you use a Fallout World, which would be fun at that point, but you get the point. The single thing I wanted to do here is showcase that this is one of those builds where you can run without starch genes, just because you will never have to use a right away, even if you are in nuke zone. The combination of the hazmat suit with the combination of what reds that you will see later on makes it so you never have to worry about using a right away ever. So there really isn't the risk of losing the mutations you do have. And yeah, the only thing you have to keep an eye out for is if you're going on a shopping spree, just don't walk through a decontamination arch. That's basically it. And lastly, we do have Junk Shield. I explained it in quick detail when I was retrieving my junk. I think you pretty much saw it here. It's yet again one of those perks I would just never pick. It's really not that great, given it is in a stat that is occupied with a lot of great stuff. Like, no matter what kind of build you run, luck will always have some good picks for you. 3 points of perk investment for 30 damage and energy resistance really isn't the world, and it relies on you carrying around junk. So yeah, ultimately there's no good reason to take it other than, yet again, what we're trying to achieve here. And that leaves us with legendary perks, which on this occasion won't be all that interesting, because as you can see here, 5 out of our 6 legendary perks are just maxed out stats, just so we can get as much perks as we need. And this is one of the main reasons why I hesitated to do the build for so long, because it took so many level ups in order to really use all those perks and still have at least a little bit of wiggle room to use other perks for weapons and so on. So yeah, you really need a ton of perk points in order to do all of that. And yeah, the only exception here is what reds. I said it. This is basically just so you can never use or must never use a stim pack. There could be other choices you could make here and just use starch genes other than Storm Chaser and live with the fact that every 3 years you maybe have to use a red away. But yeah, this is what I went for. I felt like it fitted the build relatively well, and yeah, that's it. I hope you enjoyed the build, guys. It was really a nice project for me. I know this is kind of a stupid idea to begin with and everything, but I really liked it, and I have a feeling that we will see some version of this build relatively soon again. Making maybe something like a Grognard build or so on, where I do pretty much what I said earlier, this build, but with a little bit of armor, so we can really run around bare-chested or anything without missing out on too much. Maybe not use stuff like Junk Shield and really egregious parts of this build, but yeah, I hope you enjoyed it, guys, and see you next time. Bye.